DA Leader Mmusi Maimane has hit back at claims that he benefited from former Steinhoff CEO Marcus Jooste in the form of a car leading to the municipal elections in 2016. In response to the article in the Report newspaper, Maimane claims that it's, quote, complete lies that he refused to hand the car back once the Steinhoff scandal broke. He says he campaigned in Johannesburg and wrote a letter sending the car back. In a second tweet, he claims that this is all a smear campaign and that these are, quote, gutless individuals who will not be named and instead spread lies about me and my family. DA spokesperson Sorry Malatsi says it wasn't necessary for Maimane to declare the benefits of using Jooste's sponsored vehicle.
The effect of the matter is that Steinhoff made a donation in the form of a vehicle to the Democratic Alliance. That vehicle was then used by the party leader for campaigning in the Western Cape and for fulfillment of his duties as a parliamentary leader. When the revelations about Steinhoff came to the fore, the party had a discussion about the possible risks of that donation, and it was rightfully decided that in light of those revelations, it would be inappropriate to retain the vehicle. Hence, it was subsequently returned to the donor. Given that the donation was to the organization, at the time it was felt that it wasn't necessary to declare it.
For some analysis on that story, we're joined by political analyst Ibrahim Fakir. Very good morning to you. Okay. What was Maimane thinking?
Well, the question is not what was Maimane thinking, the question is what was the party thinking, because the donation was made to the political party, and the party, and all parties, would use materials that are donated to them, whether it be posters, T-shirts, in this case a vehicle, that we use in the campaign trail. Now, isn't it interesting that those given in the lead up to the 2016 local government elections, when the DA actually performed relatively well, even though they had to do so in partnership in certain metros with the EFF. But no one complained at that time. They only complained now after the 2019 election. So it's clearly obvious that this is internal wranglings inside the DA, unhappiness with Maimane's leadership, unhappiness with the poor showing in the 2019 elections, in which the DA shaved almost 2.5 percentage points of his overall support, election on election. And it's clearly coming out of that kind of fractiousness inside the DA, not only because of the sustained loss of the DA in the election, but also because of perceptions of weak leadership on behalf of Maimane. So the question is not so much purely about Maimane. Of course, it's detrimental to him, but clearly the facts of the matter are at dispute. They have returned the vehicle. The party is responsible for what kind of resources it uses in election campaign, and it's not purely the party's or the leader's responsibility. Now, it's also equally true that because he didn't personally benefit, this was not his benefit. He has no compunction to declare this in the register of members' interests. Inadvertently, when he did record something in the member of register's interest, something he was not meant to actually declare. That's the home that he was living in Cape Town.
Yes, tell us more about that.
Well, the presumption is that, well, he declared, it's not a presumption, he declared that he is the owner of this home. Turns out that he's not, in fact, the owner. It's owned by a friend of his, a close associate, and that person is allowing him to stay there. Apparently, it's a contractual relationship in that Maimane pays rental for it. So in that sense, he's not obliged to have declared that interest in the register of members' interest. Why he did so, I have no idea. Perhaps he thought...
Yes, that's what makes it strange.
Perhaps he thought he's going to err on the side of caution and do so because he is benefiting from it. Perhaps he's getting a discount or anything of that sort. The trouble now is that he has made these claims, and these claims now have to be verified, and the only way in which they can be verified is if those documents are made public. So he's going to have to show that he has a lease or rental agreement on the property in Cape Town. He will have to show how much of rental he is in fact paying towards it and so on, because if he were getting a substantial discount on it, if he were paying much less than a market rate, then there is some personal benefit that he's deriving, and then he's obliged to declare this in the register of members' interests. But clearly, it's interesting, even in the statement that you put up, the latter part of the statement which you didn't put up is fairly telling, and that part is something in which Maimane says, My vision is to build a united South Africa for all, and these detractors are trying to detract me from that vision. That's the implication of the overall statement.
Okay, so let's go back to what you touched on a little bit earlier about the divisions in the party and those who want to get rid of him. How strong is his grip on power at the moment? What chance do they have, and who are these people who want to get rid of him?
Well, it's fairly tenuous. His hold in power is tenuous, but it's always been tenuous because I think Maimane, on the basis of his own election, remember when he was elected leader of the DA, emerged out of contest. So it wasn't a clear, unanimous election, number one. Number two, at that point it's understood that, of course, he would be the best fit at the time in terms of demographics and in terms of how the party was changing its positioning away from the kind of core liberal projection, firstly, and secondly, moving away in terms of policy direction from the kind of pure supply-side economic policies that they were kind of propagate at the moment. Third was, remember, they were talking about things like reducing the size of the state, reducing state benefits such as social grants and so on. When they made that U-turn, Maimane was in fact arguing for doubling social grants. Now, I mean, it's clearly ridiculous. It's fiscally impossible. It would have taken South Africa to the fiscal abyss. But it was an election ploy. It worked in 2016, even though it came on the back of their so-called partnership with the EFF in 2 metros. And I think what's been ignored is the degree to which that partnership in fact hurt the DA in the 2019 elections. That's the first set of things. But as that projection, as the change happened inside the leadership and the identity of the DA changed towards being slightly more, if one could call it that, social democratic, away from, and social democratic and nationalist in a sense, that backlash has been felt not just by voters deserting the party, largely towards the Freedom Front Plus, funny enough, and some towards the ANC of Ramaphosa. But certainly there are elements inside the party who are unhappy about this change in posture, in policy and identity, and are therefore fighting back. Now, it's tenuous because it means that there's a leader who's constantly looking over his or her shoulder. But process-wise, it can't happen unless there is a federal congress of the DA. And of course, some people have called there should be an early congress, a federal congress, but that hasn't yet been ratified.
Okay, let's leave it there. So, as you say, he'll be looking over his shoulder. Ibrahim Fakir, thank you very much for that.